Hello and a very warm welcome to the brand new edition of Policy Watch. I'm Kriti Mishra. Today we'll take a closer look at the National Policy on Electronics 2019. The policy envisions placing India as a global hub for electronic system design and manufacturing. This policy is aimed at achieving a turnover of $400 billion for the electronics sector by the year 2025, while generating employment opportunities for 1 crore people. The objective is also to produce 1 billion mobile handsets in India by the year 2025. The policy will create an enabling environment for the industry to compete globally. And for more on this, I'm joined by Mr. Ajay Prakash Sahani, Secretary, Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, and Mr. S.D. Saxena, Telecom expert. Welcome to Rajya Sabha Television, both of you. Mr. Sahani, let me come to you first. This policy will supplant the National Electronics Policy of 2012. Given the fact that there's perceptible change in the electronics manufacturing ecosystem, how crucial is the National Electronics Policy 2019?
2012 policy came when electronics in India was at a somewhat low ebb, and the basic instruments for igniting the sector again were contained in that policy. From 2014 onwards, some of the basic ingredients were in place, and since then we have seen very significant growth. The manufacturing of mobile handsets, for instance, has grown rapidly year on year, and in a way India has come back into the arena of manufacturing and has made its presence felt. So this new policy basically is trying to build on what we have already accomplished. We have a long way to go. Electronics today in 2019 as opposed to 2012 is no longer an independent sector. Electronics is getting into everything. So every sector is getting impacted by electronics. And so we have to imagine it not just as manufacturing of electronics as a consumable, but electronics which will have an impact on the working of each and every sector. So those are the realities that we have taken into account, and the new policy basically has various initiatives and aspirations that would help India become not just a place for manufacturing for India's own requirement, but as a center of manufacturing for the globe.
Absolutely. So the aim is to make India a hub of global electronics manufacturing.
Yes.
Also, sir, what does this policy offer? Please take us through the crucial highlights of this policy.
What we have accomplished so far is manufacturing a large number of mobiles in India. From 60 million mobiles getting manufactured in 2014, it moved on to 110 million in the coming year, to 175 million in the next year after that, and finally 2017-18, the last year for which we have complete figures, it was 225 million. 22.5 crore mobiles were being manufactured in India. This year we expect that this will move closer to 260 to 270 million mobiles, as against a total consumption, new and replacement, of about 340 million mobiles in the country. Now it's very clear, if we have to grow at this scorching pace, we must become competitive for exports. If we are to cater only to the Indian requirement, we are almost there. So this time the policies have to be in place to make India a location where competitive products come in and move forward. Now with the mobiles, though we started with assembly of mobiles, we have also tried to move into greater value addition. So there is a phased manufacturing program. It has worked well for us, where with a small duty differential, we have been able to offset the extra costs in certain areas which are there for India and make Indian environment competitive, persuading companies to bring in sub-assemblies and different kinds of modules. For instance, now companies are looking at manufacturing camera modules here, looking at manufacturing touch screens here, already the accessories, all kinds of accessories, power banks and headsets and all such accessories are getting manufactured here. From just 2 companies in 2014, we have as many as 127 companies which are today manufacturing mobiles. And if we count the companies that manufacture accessories, it's 268 companies. So in 3 years, from 2014-15 to 17-18, the electronic manufacturing volume has doubled to 59 billion. But even at 59 billion, though we have moved up from 1.3% of global manufacturing in electronics to 3%, there's a long way to go. So this new policy basically tries to build on this firm foundation.
So the entire space is dynamic and we have a long way to go, but of course, a right step in the right direction has already been made. Coming to you, Mr. Saxena, the industry was clamoring, was making vociferous demands for a forward-looking policy, for a revised policy. Now that we have a policy in place, what would be the impact on the pace of investments in this sector?
See, there is one thing which I had been concerned all the time. We had been pointing it out, and when we set up CDOT, which was one of the apex institutions, the biggest problem was hardware.
Right.
India did exceedingly well in software. We were exporting software. We were developing software for everybody. But hardware was completely neglected. Now, every time when we tried to set up a big facility, it was said that where is the volume? The interesting thing is that India is now one of the biggest users of electronics goods. And all the countries in the world are pumping their products into our country. I'll give you one example that liquid crystals, LED display which we do now and all of that. Some of my friends in Bengaluru had done tremendously beautiful work. But their know-how was used by Japan and Korea, and we could not use it. So hardware had been quite neglected. So I'm very happy that an attempt has been made to facilitate and to create a situation where we may start doing hardware and start manufacturing electronic goods and so on. I always used to discuss this, saying that there were times when we were buying watches for 35 rupees on the footpath. We had facilities. Now this chip could have been manufactured in India a long time ago. But we were importing it, but we were not using it. So there had been a lot of neglect as far as this sector was concerned, and therefore I'm very happy and glad that Mr. Sahni has pointed out that a lot of development has taken place. But I can also point out, because I had been in this sector and I lived with this, and there was a facility in Chandigarh which was the first to manufacture hardware and components. The electronics lives on components. Now the issue will be how many components we manufacture. Then there is also one thing perhaps the world may know about it. There are microprocessors which the know-how rests with only 2 or 3 companies.
Right.
Intel, for example, this computer must be using Intel. Intel will not give you the know-how. You can assemble it, you can do that. So we have a very long way to go. So some of the companies which have the know-how will not part with it. Therefore, a country like India will have to tremendously invest into R&D. Tremendously go to the university and enable the young people to do research and so on. And then the new technologies are emerging. AI, for example. AI is absolutely mind-boggling. So what kind of chips there will be, how embedded these chips will be, we have to really move at a pace which is running 3 times more than what the rest of the world is running. Therefore, at the same time, I'm very happy. And I also wish good luck to Department of Electronics and Mr. Sahni, under whose leadership this policy has come. But a lot of efforts will be needed.
So we have to keep pace with the emerging technology.
Absolutely, it's going to be very, very challenging and difficult. India can do that. We can take up the challenge and do it. But we had lagged behind in this for quite some time.
Certainly, India can do that. Yeah. Coming to you, Mr. Sahni, you've mentioned about mobile handset manufacturing. Now, with government's Make in India initiative, we've seen over the last 4 years, more than 130 mobile handset companies in India. Now, the target is to produce 1 billion handsets by the year 2025. Certainly, that is going to attract a lot of global giants and create substantial job opportunities.
We expect a large number of job opportunities to come. This time what we are, already almost all the major brands are manufacturing their handsets in India today. Next, what we are aiming at is not just the manufacture of handsets by importing sub-assemblies, but encouraging each of the brands to bring their supply chain along. And we have seen that starting to happen today. So now when companies are looking at a campus, setting up a campus, they are typically looking at about half the space for themselves and half of it for their ancillaries and suppliers. Now this is excellent news for India, because once the supply chain is in India, it's the same people who supply components and sub-assemblies to other mobile manufacturers as well as for other electronics products. So over the past 1.5 years, for instance, we incentivized bringing in the PCB assembly. It's called the surface mounted technologies, SMT lines. And over the past year and a half, we have almost 75% increase in the number of SMT lines which are there in the country. Now, while these SMT lines have come in for mobile handsets, with a very little tweaking, many of them can be made use of for assembling all kinds of other electronic products and doing the PCBs for other electronic products. So once our ecosystem is complete with the component suppliers, with the sub-assemblies, we actually have the wherewithal to move into new products and not just into the old products in which we are doing in a way a catch-up kind of a game. New products, the entire world is at a common level today, and India is well poised to make a huge impact on development, design, development and manufacturing of new products here.
And how will this policy serve as a catalyst for strengthening the entire supply chain?
See, it's not just producing the final product which is important. The electronics industry is a globally integrated kind of an industry.
Absolutely.
So even in some of the, even in those locations which are our biggest competitors, just about 45 to 50% value addition happens there. So a lot of things are imported, a lot of things are exported. Many of the multinational entities which are present here actually get their sub-assemblies done here and export them out. So it's very important for India to not just look at the final products which get produced here, but also sub-assemblies and components which get exported and become a part of the global supply chain. That is one of the aims of this current policy.
Right, so equal attention has to be paid on the ancillary units as well. Mr. Saxena, how will this policy ensure that Internet of Things, that becomes game changer for India?
See, Internet of Things is basically technology which is to be used, and now we are talking about 4G and 5G. For example, I live very close to the place where the Prime Minister inaugurated the Samsung factory. I have seen that. Now the technology is moving very fast because, in technology we call it the disruption or the disruptive technology. They are going into 5G. All over the world there is a lot of feeling about developing 5G. Perhaps you may be aware of the 5G technology, that there are a lot of countries who want to develop their own 5G technology, whereas the Chinese are offering it almost on the table. But then the world wants to develop it. US, perhaps you may be aware of Huawei controversy and so on. So therefore, a lot of technologies have to be developed, and the components are a very tricky game. And as Sani Saab has been pointing out, we are trying to develop our ecosystem. It will be good in a way, because China did the same thing in the beginning. Chinese started buying a whole lot of technologies from US, Europe and so on, but they also asked them to transfer the technology. They also asked to enable them to do a value addition. And you can see, I watched this in terms of some of their companies. We had one company called ITI, which was one of the most original company doing telecom in this part of the world. But suddenly their company, which came from behind and was not existing, became so big because they had so much of inputs given to them. And therefore, now if the government is very much keen on developing this and enabling it, perhaps this is a good sign, because once we take that vow that we will do this, the technology will develop. But the components will have to be very, very difficult tasks. It needs a whole lot of things to do. And a whole lot of countries have a grip on it. Plus they have a volume, they manufacture the whole global volume. So the cost of manufacturing becomes very, very low for them. So we'll have to take up all those challenges. But I think a good beginning has been made and a focus has been developed. So I'm very hopeful, I'm optimistic about it. But the challenges will be very many, and I think we should take up those challenges.
We'll take that question to Mr. Sahani. How do we meet those challenges and ensure that there's effective implementation of this policy?
I think one of the areas we are looking at is moving beyond just mobile manufacturing to medical electronics. A large number of devices are there which get used in all our hospitals, personal devices as well. Getting deeper into that, we have had a good beginning with one medical technology zone which has come up in the country, and we are planning to go into a much bigger bigger play in that. Automotive electronics is very big, because with electric vehicles coming in, more and more of what goes into a vehicle has electronics embedded. So automotive electronics, we have a vibrant automotive industry, and around that I think we can build. Also, we have tremendous ambitions in how quickly we will induct electric vehicles into the country.
That's right.
So on this, we can actually build a huge ecosystem around automotive electronics. Then we also have a requirement in strategic electronics. Defense manufacturing has also started off in the country, and it's looking like a high growth sector, and it's important for our security for security reasons as well. In addition to that, power electronics. Again, renewables have been coming in very rapidly, and smart meters, for instance. We have a announced program that the traditional meters would get replaced over a period of time, within a given time, by smart meters.
Right.
Again, it represents a huge opportunity to do the manufacturing here rather than import the things we require. In addition to that, fabless chip design is a very important area for us. Even while the main fabs are there only in very few countries today, but where we have huge ability, almost all the major technology companies of the world are present in India today, not just for outsourcing. They are actually designing some of the products and services that they provide to the rest of the globe. And this is one area which we can strengthen tremendously and bring that effort out from just the multinationals into new, smaller companies, creating products which India requires. I think that is one area which we expect will move rapidly.
And also taking a cue from you, and you mentioned about defense sectors. How will this policy push indigenous manufacturing of electronics required by defense and other strategic sectors?
I think there we have to start with the requirements which are going into some of the strategic areas. Already there is a fledgling industry around Bangalore, Hyderabad, Pune. These are locations where lot of new age industries companies are now coming up, and they are experimenting with all kinds of technologies, all kinds of new products. So I see a tremendous groundswell of activity in that area. I think from the defense production side also, there is a major impetus being given to this activity. So we are also concentrating on bringing the electronic system design and manufacturing training and support for units that start getting into that area from the policy and from many of our schemes.
Right. So there's focus on indigenous manufacturing, including the defense sector. Mr. Saxena, how would this policy strengthen India's cyber security profile?
See, cyber security means that if we are manufacturing a chip which is our own, we are sure about it. We call it the bells and whistles. So if you manufacture something, you know the nuts and bolts, and nobody can play with it. But when you are taking a component or a chip from outside, you are not sure what is there embedded in it.
Right.
And that is what was the reason why a whole lot of countries became very wary about the Chinese equipment, because they found that perhaps if there is we call it the malware. So there is a virus which is resident in the chip and can be activated as and when required. And we are not able to check it. And the test beds, we call them the test beds, where you can test that chip, require very big computers and a whole lot of things, and even then it goes unnoticed. So perhaps if we do things in the defense which are indigenous, it is the thing to do. But there are a whole lot of problems, and it will take some time. There is a good beginning which has been made. Like I would like to mention that Chinese, when they are using some of the chips in their infrastructure, especially the defense infrastructure, these are all indigenous. They don't allow anybody to use any other chip which is imported. And there are a whole lot of things which I may not be able to discuss. There are a lot of industrial spying which takes place, that people steal somebody's design and do a whole lot of things. We cannot do that as a country which is so open and transparent.
Right.
But there is a tremendous amount of effort which is needed. Now, there is also one thing which is good in India, that more and more of software becomes the key part in a chip, which we have been developing at a very, very fast pace, and we are very good in that. So we will have to have the chips which can be embedded with a whole lot of things. Now, what Mr. Sahni said is very, very encouraging about the automobile industry. Now, we experimented with automobile industry in a very big way. You know the case of Maruti. When it was brought in, there was a lot of criticism and discussions. But the kind of ancillaries which it developed is anybody's guess. And that is what is needed in the case of, say, defense and medical. I would like to give you one example of medical. You go to any household in India where there is a problem of blood pressure and hypertension, you will find one instrument which is called Omron.
Right.
Everybody is using Omron. Now, this is a device which we can manufacture in India, but this is not a device which we manufacture in India, and he sells it at a place at a rate which is very, very cheap. Now, that is a challenge to take it up. And there are a whole lot of such things which we can do. And there are people who are doing some jugaad kind of technologies which is much more cheaper. I came across a device in which he measures the blood sugar with a very, very crude equipment.
Absolutely. So there's the potential is immense.
A lot of possibilities, and there are a whole lot of things we should start identifying which are mass-based and start manufacturing.
Absolutely.
Which is not a very high-end technology.
I have last 30 seconds.
Right.
Mr. Sahni, the policy also provides for creation of patent fund, sovereign patent fund. Now, how would that fund ensure that there's acquisition and promotion of IPs in India?
We have experimented with set-top boxes by encouraging creation of that IP in India, and today a large number of set-top boxes are actually getting manufactured in India, competing with the imports and basically trying to grow that big. Now, with the major imports that we have, the 20 biggest imports, the idea of sovereign patent fund is to look at what are the core technologies, what are the patents that go into it, either develop or even acquire those and make them available to the Indian ecosystem so that their cost on the IP becomes much lower. So this is the main concept, and it's a very exciting idea. We have already tried this out and succeeded in one or two specific segments. Now the idea is to make it much bigger.
Absolutely. So the idea is to make our industry globally competitive. On that note, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
So this policy is expected to propel domestic manufacturing, exports, and generate substantial employment opportunities. That's all we had for you in this edition. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned to Rajya Sabha Television.